Hello, gorgeous entrepreneur. It's Tash Corbin here and welcome to the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. This is episode number 312, which means you can find all the relevant links and show notes for today's episode over at tashcorbin.com/312. Today we have a Q&A episode of the podcast. I'm going to be answering a question about how to structure your weekly emails so that they get plenty of reads, but they also do their job. So let's dive into this one. I'm Tash Corbin and this is the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. Today's question comes from Jenny, and she is the Adaptive Yogi. Jenny can be found at the Adaptive Yogi on Instagram, and her website is theadaptiveyogi.co.nz. We will make sure that we include all of Jenny's links in our show notes for today's episode at tashcorbin.com/312. And Jenny asks an amazing question, and that is, how do I design and structure that weekly email so it's full of value, but not so full that it's hard work to get through? Now, not only, and I'm going to help you answer that question, Jenny, but I also want us to make sure that your weekly email is doing its job, because our weekly email isn't just about giving value or helping people or moving them forward. Its job is also to generate leads in your business first and foremost. And so we want to make sure it's also doing that job as well. So I've got different answers to your question, and I will also answer your question about what to include and what to exclude. So the first piece of advice I will give you is that different audiences have different likes. So if your ideal client is a busy mum and who has her own business and who is wanting to be more productive and efficient, their desire and the types of emails they're going to read is going to be very different to someone who is a business owner, who has no kids, has lots of time on their hands, and they're wanting to really experiment with a bunch of different strategies. Or someone who is in a job and they read their emails at work when they've got breaks and things are quiet. And so they love having lots and lots of regular email content to keep them engaged. So as you can see, just with those three different examples, different audiences are going to have different likes. So the two things I would say to you are, number one, make sure you ask your audience, what are their preferences? Do they like short, snappy emails? Do they like video content? Do they like to have questions to answer? Do they like having conversations on email? Like, there's lots of different things you can ask your audience, and you can ask your audience by measuring how they behave and engage with certain types of emails as well. Sometimes people will say to you, I want something short and sharp, because they think that they don't use email as a procrastination tool, or they wish they didn't. But actually, you send a longer form email to them and they're more likely to open it and have a read. So have a look at the measures of your own emails and how effective they've been, but also ask them straight up questions about what it is that they like. I love doing surveys of my audience. I love asking my audience on social media, and I love asking questions in my emails. So don't be afraid to ask your audience what they're after, but give them some specificity to those questions. Don't just say, what do you like when it comes to emails? Say things like, do you prefer short and sharp, or do you love a good story? Or you might ask, do you love emails with visuals, or would you prefer it to be plain text, right? So you can ask your audience to answer those questions. And you can also ask questions, open-ended questions like, what type of help do you want with X, Y, and Z? I'm putting together some emails for the next few months, and I'd love to know from you, what are you working on right now? So even questions like that can really help you get the insight that you need. So not all advice is going to work for all audiences, and the numbers don't lie. I do love making sure that I keep track of exactly what's working for my audience and what isn't. So number two, what do you actually put in the structure of that email? I love to have a very simple structure with three key elements. The first is the love note, personal touch. So you will notice with my weekly emails, there's a short piece of copy where it's a little update from me, what's going on for me. It might be something that's happening that's pretty urgent that I want people to see. So I don't go on too long in that part of the email. It's usually 3 to 4 sentences, maybe 5 or 6 if I've got something that I don't want them to miss. So, for example, in a recent email that I did, I had 3 free events coming up within the next 3 or 4 weeks. And so I wanted to make sure everyone saw, yes, there are actually 3 big things that you can come to in the next few weeks. So I put that in my love note to make sure it was front of mind and it was most likely to get read by people. So I added that towards the end of that love note. So I call it the love note because it's the part where I'm telling people what's going on with me. Sometimes I'll share a little personal update or insight, and it really feels like it's the connecting, chatty, I'm emailing as a friend type part of my email. I put that first. Now, something that I do is in that section, if I refer to something that's a product, so maybe I'll say, this week is really exciting because I'm starting the next launch of the Takeoff program. Whenever I say Takeoff program, I hyperlink to the sales page of the Takeoff program. And I have found over the years that those types of links in my emails are the ones who get far and away the most clicks. I can make pretty shiny buttons. I can have clickable banner ads. I can do all that I like. But where I'm talking about a program, if I hyperlink to that program, that's where I get the most clicks from. So in that love note, it doesn't have to be like promo free. Don't talk about your business. Pretend that you're not in business. No, you are a business owner. This is a business email. So if you're talking about a part of your business, a product, a service, a program, a free event, whatever it is, hyperlink to it. Second part of that email is core content. So my email that I send out every week includes this week's podcast. And it's one of the most powerful ways to remind my audience to go and listen to my podcast. It's a really easy way and a good reason for people to be on my mailing list is getting the link to the new podcast every single week and reminding them to go and check it out, and also choosing whether to check it out this week. I give a good description of my podcast so people can decide whether they want to listen to that one or not. I'm not upset if people don't listen to every single podcast episode, because not every single podcast episode is particularly interesting to every single person. So rather than try and force it and make the podcast something that everyone wants to listen to, I instead am just really clear what's included in this week's podcast, and so people can choose whether they want to go see it or not. So that's the core content, my big juicy piece of content for the week. And then I have an offer. I will have an offer in every newsletter, every weekly email that I send out. Sometimes that offer is to come to a free webinar or one of my free resources. Sometimes that offer is a paid thing. You'll see more and more promos about the Takeoff program over the next few weeks because I'm in the midst of launching it. But whatever I'm launching at that point in time, but I have one key offer and I have it in written form, and then I have a banner ad for it. Now, I have experimented and played with my email formats over and over and over in the years, and I keep coming back to this very simple structure. So the 3 key elements are the love note or the connection piece, core piece of content, and the offer, and I put them in that order. Now, as I said, I have a range of different ways for people to click on things in my weekly newsletter. So tip number 3 is have a range of options for clicking. Try hyperlinking in the text, having a button, having a banner ad or some sort of image that's clickable. And sometimes having a combination of all 3 at all times is what your audience wants and needs. Different people like links in different places. So you might have it hyperlinked in the text, there's a button here and there, and there's some ad images. The thing I would say is that if you're a service-based business, i.e. you're selling VIP services, courses, digital products, then in most cases you want your weekly newsletter, your weekly email to look like it's more conversational and not look so ad-y, if that makes sense, until such time as your audience are really comfortable and confident that your newsletter is going to have lots of value for them. The great thing about your weekly newsletter is that it's your opportunity to really get to know your audience, what they like and what they don't like, and to experiment with different options. I used to have H2H because my newsletter was called Heart to Heart. So I used to have H2H at the start of the subject line for my newsletters. It actually at first increased the open rate because my hottest audience were like, oh, it's Tash's newsletter, it's Tash's newsletter. So it made them more likely to open it. But as my list got bigger and my audience got a little fresher because I was bringing in more and more people onto my mailing list each month, then the open rate of that started to drop down and I took it away and the open rate bumped up again. So, even sometimes the strategy that works at one point in time in your business growth doesn't work a little bit later. So when H2H at the start of the subject line worked for me most was when my audience was the warmest and I didn't have a lot of cold audience coming into the list at each month. I was, really focused on nurturing my existing audience rather than investing a lot of money in growing my mailing list. So that worked really well because the audience was so warm. They wanted to have a quick identifier to see that it was my newsletter. When the audience is a little colder, the subject line needs to be a little more enticing and a little less, this is a newsletter, because, they haven't yet developed that trust with me to know that my newsletters are way more valuable than some of the other ones that they get into their newsfeed, into their mail inbox. But one thing I will say, if you have a product-based business, like the newsletters that I subscribe to for product-based businesses, one, you'll probably send your emails out less often, but two, they can actually look like salesy emails because I follow that products newsletter because I want to buy the products. I love the products. So having a product of the month and having different offers or things around in that email, that's the reason that I've signed up for it. I want to know when you've got stuff on sale. I want to know what new stuff you've got in stock. That's why I'm following that email. So if you have a product-based business, then you will get away with your normal email, your regular email being something that's a little bit more salesy, a little bit more image-based and image-focused, and, highlighting your products far more consistently. But I find once every 2 weeks or even once a month is a better time period between emails when it's a product-based business. So it just really depends. I once got signed up to a mailing list for a product-based business. It was for doggy coats and accessories for my little munchkin. And they were sending me emails every 3 or 4 days. And I ended up unsubscribing because I love little doggy jackets and jumpers, but I'm not looking for product updates every 3 or 4 days. Once a month would have been fine, maybe twice a month, depending on how many sales they were having, but it was just far too many and I completely unsubscribed. Actually, I think it's Hamish and Andy on their podcast. They're an Australian comedian partnership, two dudes who have a podcast. They actually have a segment on their podcast every now and then, which is please, for the love of God, unsubscribe me. And I think it was on there that I heard them talking about one of them had purchased chicken wire for fencing off chickens, and they were receiving daily emails from this chicken wire company. They're like, how often do people purchase chicken wire that they need an email every single day? So just be mindful of what level of frequency of email will work for your audience. And you might even like to have 2 different types of email. So I've got quite a few clients at the moment where we're making some changes to their regular emails. And one week they'll send a newsletter type email. And then the next week they send more like a check-in email or a catch-up email. One has images and links and stuff. And the other one is unformatted, just black text, no images or anything like that. But it's just more I just wanted to tell you about this thing. And it might just have one link. So a client that I was working with just a few weeks ago, we are doing that for her because she sends out her regular newsletter just once a month. And that's really what works for her. But she wants to, in the mid-month, send another email, but she doesn't want it to be the full-blown newsletter. And so we crafted up this really beautiful, not formatted, just plain text email. And she will let her audience know, I just need to let you know about this Facebook Live that I did, or I just need to let you know about this really cool thing that I found. So it's more just being of service, just a little helpy help type email, and it's completely unformatted. So she will toggle between the two. So you might also find that works really well for your audience too. And there's some really fun ways that you can play with structure. It doesn't always have to be exactly the same. All right. Now, the 4th tip that I want to give is that for me, taking away the banner image and instead having a selfie of me, an up-to-date selfie of me in my regular weekly email has done wonders for my open rate and my click-through rate. So it's something that I loved about someone else's email that I used to receive regularly. She has since taken the selfie out of her email, by the way. But I saw that that's what she did. Like, just here's a selfie of me today every time she sent out a newsletter. And I loved it. And one day I was like, why is it that I love that selfie so much? And it was because it felt like it was like real and up to date, right? It's just, here's my face right now. And as someone who is a visual person, as someone who's a people person, I really love having a person come along with that email. And so when I incorporated that into my regular email, it really did help improve my open rate and my click-through rate. So that is tip number 4 for your regular weekly email and how to structure it so that it's got lots of great value and it's not totally overwhelming and super long. And then the last thing I just want to say is that this also helps that email to do its job. You'll notice here that I'm not suggesting you take all the links and images out of your emails. I'm not suggesting that you make your subject lines like really weird and curious so that you trick people into opening them, right? Because the other thing we want to ensure is that, one, we make it easy for people to make a decision to open our emails. And 2, just sending a tip and not having any upsell or not having any offer or, trying to like sneak your way through into people's inbox and force them to read 3 paragraphs before they realize, oh, this is just your regular newsletter. For me, it doesn't actually like stand strong in like what its job actually is. We want to train your audience that your newsletter is helpful and it's simple for them to find what they need. We also want to train your audience to check your emails for any upcoming events, any offers, launches that you're doing, any special offers, that's keeping them up to date. They signed up to your mailing list because they're interested in hearing from you. And don't assume that everyone only wants the free stuff. People do actually want to work with you. People do actually want to pay you money. So make it easy for us to do that. And the more consistent you get with sending out that email every week, the less urgent it will feel that you need to tell everyone about every single offer that you have on the table right now. Keep it to one focal point as much as possible with what your offer is. And then it just feels like this beautiful sense of calm assuredness. Like if I check your email each week, I'm going to be up to speed with whatever's going on. So one of the big reasons why I see people have overwhelming emails that people don't read because there's just too much in them is because you're not sending them consistently enough. So then when you do send them, you've got 6 things to tell people about and that becomes overwhelming. So stick to that nice, simple structure and send that email regularly and you'll find less and less you urgently need to tell people about multiple things at once. Hopefully you found that really helpful, Jenny. If you've got any follow-up questions, please do get in touch. You can always email me at support@tashcorbin.com. And also, if you want to come into the Heart-Centered Soul-Driven Entrepreneurs Facebook group, you can use #podcast and let me know you've been listening to episode number 312 and we can continue the conversation over there. Now, if you have been listening to this and you're like, I don't have enough people on my mailing list. I need to actually get more people on my mailing list. Well, I've got great news for you because I have a free training. It's called Grow Your Audience, and it particularly focuses on growing your mailing list. It's just 40 minutes long. It's really punchy. It's really practical, and there are stages in the training. So I've got 4 stages for where you're up to in your business and in your audience growth. So make sure you go and check that one out. I'll have the link over with the show notes at tashcorbin.com/312. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. Until next time, I cannot wait to see you shine. Bye for now. Would you like more tips, tools, and resources to help you grow your heart-centered business? Head to tashcorbin.com today.